it's always the United States, 444 million. Yemen is a member of the Arab League. There are 22 member states of the Arab League, including United Arab Emirates. You have Qatar, you have Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Djibouti. I mean, you have there's 22 members, I believe. And I'm just wondering where they are in this. I mean, these are oil-rich nations. Oil-rich nations. I mean, for crying out loud. I mean, if you look at the, I mean, goodness, I mean, OPEC and OPEC Plus and all the money that's been going in with gas and oil and everything. I mean, these are very wealthy nations. This is one of their own member nations. I'm just curious as to the level of their involvement in this. That 444 could go for, I mean, so many things here domestically. I mean, what is it? In United Arab Emirates, and right off in Dubai. Have you ever heard of the Palm Islands? It looks beautiful. This country is so wealthy, they built a entire bunch of islands, and it's shaped like a palm tree for tourists and for rich people to have vacation homes. I mean, it's a massive island shaped like a palm tree. And I think it was completed back in 2006. It's a city within a city. It's pretty amazing. Entirely from sand and rocks. No concrete or steel was used. It's pretty unbelievable. I mean, it's, crazy construction. There's a lot of, people who've asked about, the ocean sediments and the wildlife and the erosion and all this stuff. But, I mean, it's pretty crazy. I mean, there's all kinds of, what is the level of involvement in the Arab League in all of this? 444 million on top of so much else that has been donated. Not to say that it's not. And these are two separate issues. Whether or not something is, yes, it's awful to see suffering in the world. But you cannot fix everything. You cannot fix every country. You cannot fix every problem. You cannot fix every catastrophe. You cannot heal every heart. You can't do that. You not one country cannot be responsible for doing all of it, because it does two things. It overburdens the country doing all of it, and number two, it gives everybody else a pass. And you can't have one country always doing the most. Think about this. I was pulling this up in my notes. $444 million. Like we're sending, what was the amount that we're sending now again? On Friday it came out, we're sending to Ukraine. A whole bunch of other money. $200
billion.
Yeah,
now?
But we're sending more.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. He said last week, there's more going.
I think another 50 bill?
Something crazy. So why can't, and I pose this question online, why couldn't we use some of our own aid money? Like our own, these are our taxpayer dollars. If we're going to spend our own aid money on anything, then wouldn't it be great if some of our own aid money could be spent on things like, I don't know, accelerating, as I said earlier, the domestic production of rare earth element to expedite the development of rare earth element mining, or extraction, or pioneering safer extraction? Or what about the domestic expansion and creation of new refineries? That is something that we sorely need, that Democrats have opposed for forever. Or what about domestic antibiotic production? Here's a story that's back from a couple of years ago. So China has long cornered the market on antibiotics. Now, this really was coming out, and people were really starting to pay attention to a lot of this, even more so during lockdown. The U.S. allowed its plants. There was a great, I think this was a MarketWatch, Wall Street Journal piece. MarketWatch. There was this question of sustainability in terms of our own antibiotic supply during lockdown. Everybody remember this, and everyone's freaking out because you're talking about antibiotic resistance. et cetera, et cetera. We need to be able to develop more. One of the unfortunate things with Obamacare, which did not get overturned during the last time that Republicans held things, and that needs to be something that happens at some point, was that the R&D development is going to be slashed because so many excise taxes and all this other stuff are going for everything else, and so marketing and R&D are the first things that are always cut. Well, R&D is, you're developing, you're exploring new antibiotics and treatments for those resistant bacteria. So the U.S. allowed a lot of its plants to close under this onslaught of subsidized Chinese production. So we have almost no ability or capacity to manufacture antibiotics. Now, this Market Watch piece from a couple of years ago was discussing how China controls about roughly 90% of the global supply of the inputs needed to make generic antibiotics, things that treat bronchitis, pneumonia, pediatric ear infections, life-threatening sepsis, things like that. Now, remember the generic antibiotics during lockdown in the middle of the pandemic and everything, including the azithromycin. There were a lot of secondary bacterial infections, but there was a shortage. We had a shortage because the key things that are needed for azithromycin and other drugs, that's supplied by China. So we are, really, if you think about it, we're not really prepared for any kind of bacterial, widespread outbreak from bacterial infections. Listen to this. I'm going to make sure I cite this correctly. This is from NIH. They said and this was back in April of 21, so these were the numbers at the time. So and again, this is just what most of the 675,000 Americans, they were talking about a number of people during coronavirus who had also passed away from secondary bacterial infections. And they were talking about the shortages of antibiotics, et cetera. They even went back to the 1918 influenza pandemic. And they said most of the 675,000 Americans who died then, it was bacterial pneumonia. So for instance, think about today, if we were unable to get the necessary inputs or what we needed for antibiotic production, think about how catastrophic that would be. If you became ill with the flu and then you got a secondary, bacteria, et cetera, infection. And where it comes to penicillin, one of the things that the Market Watch piece noted is that the last U.S. penicillin fermentation plant, it used to produce 70% of the world's supply, closed in 2004 because of Beijing, Market Watch notes, strategically subsidizing its domestic drug manufacturing companies as they frequently sold drug inputs at below market prices. So as a result, you had these manufacturing companies that were going out of business. And scary. So now Beijing has this big return on their investment through the increased control of global pharmaceutical supply. So this is huge. Why can't we be more, if we're going to worry about sending our own taxpayer dollars and sending our dollars as aid to everybody else, why can't we spend our aid on things that we need? We need aid here. We need aid in energy independence. We need aid in creating more refineries. We need aid in becoming sustainable in terms of the production of antibiotics. We need that aid. We need that money to develop it. So why isn't it being done?